Okay, my videos on Reformed Egyptian have been generating some interesting discussion. I'm arguing against the anti-Mormon critical argument that no such thing even exists. The whole idea of Reformed Egyptian is simply a fairy tale. It's in Joseph Smith's imagination. You Mormons are idiots for believing this fairy tale. No, we're absolutely not. We have all the evidence in the linguistics and the history of the scripts in the archaeological discoveries. Reformed Egyptian exists. The other argument I want to get to, however, is the argument that I am proving too much by saying that our own English letters via the Latin, the Roman, the Greek, the Phoenician, the Aramaic, the Etruscan, back to the Proto-Sinaitic, all of which originally were Egyptian hieroglyphs. By me saying English is Reformed Egyptian, I am proving too much. I'm simply repeating the state of the evolution of the scripts, as the linguists, historians, philologists, and archaeologists have absolutely demonstrated. The 1999 book called The Mysteries of the Alphabet by Mark Elaine Uaknin, O-U-A-K-N-I-N. This is by Abbeville Press, 1999. Here's what he says on page 12. He says, the European alphabets, the ways they have evolved and their hidden and revealed meanings from Egypt right down to the present day, from the ancient Hebrew, Phoenician, Greek, Etruscan, and Latin. All of it originated from Egypt. Now, the scholars are not saying English is therefore Reformed Egyptian in the manner I'm saying it. They're not saying this proves Reformed Egyptian exists, even though that is exactly what it does prove, and it proves English comes out of the hieroglyph. They are saying it's been modified, though. Of course. All you have to do is look at the evolution of the scripts. Look! The alphabet of the Proto-Sinaitic, from which the Canaanite or Phoenicians, as the Greek called it, the Aramaic, the Paleo-Hebrew and Hebrew, the Nabatean, the Greek, and Arabic scripts are derived right down to our modern European alphabets through the Etruscan and the Latin. This is the evolution. And the Proto-Sinaitic has been proven, discovered archaeologically, to come right out of the Egyptian hieroglyphs themselves, according to Uaknin. William F. Albright dates the Proto-Sinaitic texts. Now, all these photos that I'm showing you in this video are from Uaknin's book. He has lots of them on the Proto-Sinaitic, the evolution from the Egyptian hieroglyphic, and so on and so forth. So Albright dated the Proto-Sinaitic texts to the reign of the Egyptian queen Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, 1500 BC, which is interesting because that's the traditional date that the Hebrews came out of Egypt from slavery. Then the Proto-Sinaitic arose in that same spot, in that Sinai area. Albright created a comparative table showing the 23 Proto-Sinaitic signs he chose and their Egyptian prototypes. It all comes from the Egyptian hieroglyphs, folks. I can't be proving too much if I'm simply stating the case archaeologically, historically, and linguistically that we have. That's on page 95. The ox was the original letter, from which it gave rise from the Proto-Sinaitic to the Hebrew, Phoenician, Greek, and Latin alphabets. In other words, and this is on page 101, almost all the ancestors of the alphabet we use in most of the Western languages today, these derive from the hieroglyphs. And he shows this for every single letter of our English alphabet. Instead of the full bowl, the hieroglyph became just the head of the ox, and this in turn we inherited in our Western European scripts as the letter A. He says that on page 104. The Greek alphabet gave rise to the Latin alphabet, is directly derived from the Proto-Sinaitic alphabet via the Phoenician and ancient Hebrew. That's on page 107. On page 118, all the letters have changed in the same way. The change from the graphic image to the letter is made through reduction, where a small part represents the whole. This I would call a reforming of the pictogram. A drawing of an ox or a bull existed in Egyptian hieroglyphics. This is the determinative. This is the graphic form found. The head of the ox is the graphic form found in the Proto-Sinaitic inscriptions. It was that head of an ox that became our letter A. On page 168, the Vav, which is the letter F in our alphabet, the ancient form which looked like a Y is also reminiscent of the bracket that supports a folded ship mast. And in the hieroglyphs, it is especially encountered from the hieroglyphs in the Proto-Sinaitic. On page 200, he says the original pictogram of the letter J, which is the Yod in Hebrew, he says this was borrowed from hieroglyphics that use a large number of variations based on the shape of the arm, the forearm, and the hand. Again, and he shows wonderful Proto-Sinaitic inscriptions that you're looking at right now. There are the letters. The letter K is the hieroglyph also distinguishes between the arm, the forearm, and the hand itself, with the Kaf being the palm, and the hieroglyph is pronounced D, as in delta. There's some more Proto-Sinaitic and Egyptian hieroglyphic texts there. The letter M is derived from Mem, the 13th letter of the Proto-Sinaitic alphabet. It represents a stream of water or waves in the sea. This M is the Hebrew Mayim. It is borrowed from the Egyptian hieroglyphic that almost has the same form. Page 234. On page 236, he says this form of the Mem for water is almost exactly the same in both hieroglyphics and Proto-Sinaitic. It's the same with the letter N, the 14th letter. Nun, the original form in the Proto-Sinaitic, represents a serpent, a snake, a water serpent, or an eel. This sign is derived directly from the Egyptian hieroglyphic representing a cobra, which is pronounced like the English letter J. That's on page 252. The modern Hebrew form is an almost direct adaptation of the hieroglyphic and the Proto-Sinaitic with a few minor distortions. He says that on page 254. Same with the letter O. He says on page 264, here again, the relationship with the hieroglyphic seems evident. The determinative is the I or something to do with the I. With this letter O, the Proto-Sinaitic sign of the letter P is a mixture of the Egyptian hieroglyph sign for mouth and the P sound in the hieroglyphic inscriptions. That's on page 274. On page 286, the letter Q, the following hieroglyphics could be considered to be the possible origin, and you can see the huge variety of forms there. Every one of them could have been an origination of our letter Q. In the letter T on page 318, this sign is the simplified form of the hieroglyphic heart and trachea, which is pronounced Nefer. It hardly changed at all when it passed into the Hebrew and Phoenician scripts and can be easily identified on almost all of the inscriptions. That's on page 318. Finally, on page 350, the language developed with its phonetic peculiarities and its unique way of thinking and interpreting existence. It's commemorated through the shape of the letters, their names, and their meanings they originally had when they were invented over 3,500 years ago. It is this which has been handed down to our own time, an essential part of a civilization at the crossroads of Egypt and its hieroglyphics, the Hebraic world, and its Proto-Sinaitic graffiti. English is a form of Egyptian hieroglyphic. It's just been changed. It's been modified. In other words, it absolutely is Reformed Egyptian.